Welcome back to Table Talk. I am pleased to introduce my guest for today, Dr. Murphy Martin, to discuss a fascinating topic called SAD. Welcome, Dr. Martin.
Karen, thank you. I'm glad to be here to discuss this topic with you.
You're welcome. I'm fascinated by this. It's just something that interests me because you hear of so many people that this affects. We used to call it the winter blues, but it's a little bit more serious. Tell us what SAD is and what SAD stands for.
Okay. SAD is a type of depression that people experience usually in the wintertime, but we'll talk about it can be at other times. SAD, Seasonal Affective Disorder. It's one of the major depressive symptoms that we have, and they do call it the winter depression. You're right, they call it the winter blues. They also call it summer depression or summertime sadness. So it happens not only in the winter, mainly, but it can happen in the summertime also.
So it's more common, I think, than what we might realize. How many people does this affect?
You know, when you contacted me about coming here, Karen, I didn't really know the answer to that. I know in my practice here in McMinnville, I'll see someone maybe once a month or a couple people a month that experience this. That gives you an idea. I did look that up. Let me see, I made some notes. In general, it said that either from 0 to 9.7% of the population. So I guess you could take any area, a town of 20,000, what that would mean, or a country of 300 million, what that might mean. In general, we have about 30 million people in the United States that take antidepressants. Now we can say from that we probably have got anywhere from 50 to 60 million that are depressed. So some part of that percentage would be this seasonal affective disorder, which is called SAD. I looked this up too. There's 2.5 more times in the northern states.
I could understand that because the less sunshine,
Right.
You think of Alaska and Oregon. We were
Right,
talking about
right.
that before we went on camera. They have a lot more rain and cloud.
That's exactly right. And we'll talk about it as we get more into it. It's something about this lack of light that the body needs. Yeah, I even have down here more in Alaska because they say in Alaska it's not dark for 6 months, but it is darker, and there are times it's dark. They say also, though, in the summertime and spring, cabbages grows the size of a 5-gallon bucket because you have sunlight on it 24 hours a day. So it's pretty common. I mean, you could multiply that out. I have another couple comments here about that. It affects women more than it affects men. But that's true of depression in general, and I think that's because women have to put up with men. No.
I might agree with you there.
The men folks might not like me saying that, but I think the reason for that is that women are just usually more sensitive to what's going on in life in general, and men, we probably experience it too, and we're just going to push through it. We don't have stuff like that. But men experience SAD also, and I've
noticed kind of in the wintertime, I get in a way where I kind of want to go into hibernation mode. But then you come out of it. So that kind of may be a telltale sign for me that it's, something as far as a temporary thing.
Right.
Instead of true depression.
That's
as
right.
You say.
It's a seasonal depression. It also says, and I didn't realize this, and this is new for me, and I don't work with as many young people anymore, but it said that it's also more common in young persons and young adults. I'm not quite sure why that is. I guess we can Google anything. The other day our preacher said either look in the Bible or Google it and you can find it, There's another important issue about the population and experiencing SAD. And it's whether you have a history of that in the family or not.
Just like somebody could have a history of depression in their family, because this is a form of
That's right.
depression, I suppose.
And I think a lot of times people don't know what is happening.
I agree.
You know, they will say something like, I'm lazy, or in the winter I get lazy, or I don't want to do my chores, or I feel like I want to go out and see some folks or go to a movie or do something, and I just feel lethargic. And so when people come in talking like that, and they haven't felt that way during the rest of the year much, although we did say, you know, as you pointed out, we can have it in the summertime, but not as often.
Well, tell us, you know, we can be affected by it in the South too. We have a lot of, I would think we probably go in and out of it a lot with our weather being one day, you know, for a week or two, we may experience cold, and then it may sunny, you know, be sunny for a few days, and you feel a little bit better. Tell us what some of the symptoms of SAD
Okay, I wrote these down so I could remember them. First of all, there's an emphasis on the lowering of your level of energy. I said a minute ago, people will sometimes say, I'm just feeling lazy these days. I'm not feeling up to par. My mojo's got up and taken off, you know. The idea that the chores that need to be done, whether the chores that a fellow needs to do or a woman needs to do, you know, or a young person, a little more trouble in school sometime when young people are experiencing this. They just don't want to get the homework done, things like that. So an overall lowering of energy. Now, you have to be careful when you have some of these symptoms we're talking about, because sometimes when people present some of these symptoms to me, I'll say to them, have you been to your physician or your nurse practitioner and checked out if anything else could be going on, right? So keep that in mind as we look at these symptoms. Since I'm a non-medical person, of course, as a counselor, I want to make sure there's not a organic or organicity, something happening with them other than just SAD going on or depression in general. So that's always a good point to remember. Sometimes folks say, well, I came here because the doctor had already checked me out. I said, okay, well, we're in good shape then.
Yes.
Right.
So how serious can it be?
Well, the research doesn't really point up to it being so serious that someone might begin to have harmful thoughts as much as it is affecting your everyday life, or say your marital relationships. Sometime when that energy level goes down, and we'll look at some of these other causes, you know, it's almost like a value judgment's placed on it. Well, you don't want to hang out and talk with me, or you don't want to go places. We used to go on a date. This winter we hadn't done anything. So it can affect a marriage, it can affect relationships, it can affect your job.
Very true.
You know,
Because you kind of lose your, as you said, your mojo to get your projects done and things like that. And,
right.
And next thing you know, you're behind in your work, and it can
right.
snowball from there.
And then it's overwhelming. Well, another one is difficulty concentrating. You know, if during the summer months or spring or other parts of the year, it seemed like you could concentrate fairly well on doing whatever your chore is, whether at work or at school or something, and that concentration starts going down, well, of course, that could be a sign. And here's one, fatigue. Simply, you've heard of fatigue syndrome, you know, where people have this fibromyalgia and stuff like that. Well, this fatigue simply, and people will call it tired out. I'm just tired all the time. They used to have these medicines advertised on television, but I don't think you can do that anymore, that Geritol and stuff like that. But it's that idea that I'm just fatigued all the time. I'm wiped out, you know. Another one that I looked up and I experienced with my clients, you can either have an increase or decrease in appetite. See, some person might say, well, I can understand that you have a decrease in appetite, but could an increase in appetite mean that? And could you guess why people's appetite goes up when they experience SAD? You want to guess to see what you come up with?
Well, my experience is you get a boost,
yes.
a boost of energy,
yeah.
and your endorphins kick in.
That's exactly right. you're self-medicating. You're trying to, your body is saying, you know, I've got to do something to help out. So, and a lot of times we like sugars because they give us a quick burst of energy, or carbohydrates, and then that's broken down into sugars, of course. So it can go up, it can go down. I think most of the time it goes down simply because, as we say, this fatigue, this feeling of I don't really care, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and especially if just two people or just one person, a single person, they'll say, well, I'm not even cooking anymore. You know, I just eat what I can. And of course, that's not good. That leads into other aspects of mental health and physical issues. Here's one, an increased desire in being alone. Just not wanting to be around folks.
Well, I can understand that at times too. You kind of, as I said, you kind of want to hibernate and push back a little bit and not want to be quite as social as you would be.
When you're experiencing SAD, seasonal affective disorder. Affective is, of course, our moods. And when your mood is down, your energy level's down, then it's hard to socialize. People asking you questions and you're commenting, well, how are you doing today? And you don't want to say, you really want to know? I mean, you know, so you, right.
So you just kind of don't put yourself in those situations.
That's right, it requires energy. Now, most people will say, and we get to some of the treatment of this a little later, but most people will say, well, when I go ahead and go on and visit or go to church or go to the movie, I'm glad I did. I had a good time. But it's that original taking that first step that seems to affect people so much. Being alone then, you know, you'll begin to feel like, well, self-esteem is affected. What do I have to offer anyway? And I'm not looking good. I've gained weight, this and that. And so you end up restricting your social contact, and that's not good, you know, really. I mean, every now and then it's good.
Right.
But
and we'll get into that, I'm sure, when we talk about some of the treatments for it. But sometimes pushing through is one of the best things I've found that you can do when things like that come on. Tell us, you know, I'm still fascinated by the reading that I did where you can get it in the spring and the summer. How does it happen during that time of the year?
Well, I looked that up, and it doesn't happen because so much of the light. And I think when it happens during the summer, it has to do with things like allergies. Okay, I was talking about the circadian clock. I hadn't seen that in a long time, and I hadn't thought about applying that. But there's something to do with the circadian clock. Let me define how I saw that. I'll read it. It said the circadian clock, or sometimes referred to as the biological clock, not necessarily the biological clock of
right.
where I'm going to lose
aging
or can't get pregnant or something like that. It says it's the internal biological clock which regulates metabolic processes in the body. Biological clock which allows us to physiologically change in the environment. So the best I can understand, in the summer months and in the spring months, anything that can affect the circadian clock and the balance of that, you mentioned Oregon. Well, out in Oregon, it's not just simply because there's not as much sunlight and it's cloudy, there's a lot of rain. So rain affects the body in a certain way. Allergies affect the body. And of course, you would think, well, you get a lot of sun because you can get sunburn, you're out in it all the time. However, when I looked this up, it said you can get too much sun. You know, the body can have so much sun that the skin gets burned. Well, the body can have so much sun that it affects this whole metabolic system that's going on in the body. And therefore, it can produce this type of seasonal depression, although I think that's rarer. I will go back and say there's a couple other symptoms of it,
yes,
if I might.
That'd be great.
Increase the need for sleep. And again, can you guess why that? You need more sleep when you're experiencing SAD.
I guess your body is probably trying to repair itself.
Tired.
Yeah.
And you're again thinking, if I can just sleep, which you do, although sleep is a very unusual thing. I've never realized how all that works, right?
Yes.
You lay down, you sleep, and you feel refreshed.
Yes.
And so there's that increase. And there can be weight gain or loss based on that, on the appetite. So that has more to do about the symptoms and the causes.
So we talked about youth is at risk, but who else other than women and younger folks?
Well, of course, I see a lot of, not a lot, but I see a number of people like myself that are getting older, okay? And as you start getting older, a lot of the systems in your body just naturally don't work the same way they do. And I've had some people come in, and older folks, and said, well, I've read about this SAD situation, and I'm wondering if I don't experience some of that. And sometimes what I think it's misdiagnosed. I think what it is the aging process. You begin to think, if a man lives an average of 80 years and a woman 82 years, and you're 72 years old like I am, be 73 in March, then you're thinking, you know, unless the Lord lets us live a little longer. So I think sometimes it's misdiagnosed. But I do think the fact that you don't metabolize things the same, because we didn't talk about it, but part of what happens, if I might go into this, in terms of what makes SAD affect us the way it is, nearly all of, the way I understand it, nearly all of the chemicals in the body, or most of them, are hormonal. We just think of testosterone or progesterone or estrogen. But you've got insulin, and you've got all other these hormones. What's the one that when you get all excited? Adrenaline. Adrenaline's hormone. Well, some of them are called, one's called serotonin. There's neoepinephrine and dopamine. These are called neurological transmitters. And that's what transmits all this stuff in our brain. If you ever hit your funny bone, it tingles. Well, all that's going on evidently up in our brain all the time. But it doesn't short out. If it shorts out, we pass out, like an electrical charge or something. That's right. But of all of the hormones, SAD seems to affect the serotonin level more than any of the rest of them. And so when the serotonin level goes down, the neurotransmitter doesn't work the same, and therefore you end up with SAD, seasonal affective disorder. Also, when you begin to experience SAD, have you heard of melatonin?
Yes, I have, and sometimes I take some of that at night to help me sleep.
That's exactly right. Well, the melatonin levels go down. And when they go down, the fatigue, difficulty in sleeping too much or not enough in others, so they're affected too. And especially, I think, with older people, if they don't sleep well, you know, they're not going to have the energy they need. They're more susceptible to other things besides just depression.
So as you get older, some of these hormonal levels kind of decrease, and that can affect, I guess, our mood. And then I think of so many people maybe don't have families close by to take them out to, you know, you kind of tend to become what we refer to as a shut-in.
Yes.
You're not getting out a lot, so I would think they were at high risk.
That's exactly right. You know, in the counseling field, we don't have a lot of statistics because it's very private, and with HIPAA law, it should be, and there's a lot of HIPAA laws now that makes it even more private, which is good. But what little research we have done, or people do, about counseling, if you have family to support you, or church or synagogue or something like that, or friends or neighbors, you do a lot better in life in general, but you do a lot better if you're experiencing something like SAD or some of the other depressive disorders. Which leads me to say I might talk just a minute, if you want me to, about SAD and the other types of depression you can have.
Yes, and then we'll jump into our treatments as well, so go right ahead.
Okay. Well, of course, depression in general, right? And depression has some of the same kind of symptoms, almost identical, although we would add like feeling overwhelmed. That's another one you get with general depression. it goes so far as to say you begin to have harmful thoughts, and some people even begin to have suicidal thoughts. Now that's rare, and you certainly want to try to treat it way before then, but you can have general depression. And here's one, bipolar depression. General depression is called unipolar depression. You're steady, you're doing fine, and you go down. So that's unipolar. You just go down to the South Pole. Okay.
Yes.
Bipolar is you're here doing all right, and you might go down and you feel really down, and then you go all the way up past doing all right, and you're up here into some manic stuff.
Manic, right.
You're up toward the North Pole. So that's called bipolar, same word, same, or manic depressive. And so you can have that. You can also have women who've had pregnancies and had babies understand what postpartum depression is all about. That's a hormonal thing. Once having had the baby, it's not just all hormonal. It's once you got that little fella.
Overwhelmed. Yes.
You've been there. It's you know, you've got several children. It's 24/7, and I'm glad to say that I think men are getting a little better about recognizing this and being a part of it. And there are a lot of good dads out there that also help, and I'm sure that helps the women. Okay, not only do you have that, let me see here, you can have dysthymia. Now, dysthymia is a low-grade depression. I'll give you an example. If we took our temperature and it was 102, that'd be a serious fever. Well, that'd be like depression. If we took our temperature and it was 99 instead of 98.6, that would be a mild temperature, and you'd have a little infection someplace, sore throat or something. Well, that's what dysthymia is. It's a real mild depression. But now, Karen, watch this. If you don't have any anxiety or depressive disorders, and the winter months hits, or sometime even the summer months, and you experience SAD, seasonal affective disorder, and you're not depressed, then you're going to be affected to a certain extent. Say a scale of 1 to 10, 10 serious depression, 1's not much. You might end up with a 3 or 4 or 5. But let's say you have postpartum, or general depression, unipolar depression, or bipolar depression, right? Then you have SAD. Ooh.
Yeah,
And
compounds.
That's right. And so some people come in and say, I think this SAD, I've read about it, and I'm way down here. Then you begin to ask some questions, you begin to look and see that's true, but you've also had some other type of depression. And of course, that's where you want to get to see your some of the treatments come in, especially medical.
Let's talk about those.
Okay.
We can't, because you don't have to live with this. I mean,
No.
there's something you have to deal with, but there's some things you can do to help pull out of it.
That's right. That's a real good point. In my field, I've been in this field a long time, and years ago, people, when it came to things like this, they just wanted to sort of push through it, and it's good. Some things you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and push on through. But sometimes it's just too hard. So I think if you're experiencing SAD, or you think you're experiencing it, you can either start out with your counselor, your local counselor, or you can start out with your primary care physician or nurse practitioner. We've got some fine professionals here in town, and counselors also. Some people go straight and start talking to a psychiatrist, which means people say, well, that means I'm crazy. No, it doesn't. It means you're smart. They're specialists. These men and women only have to deal with what's up here, where primary care physicians have to treat you from your nose to your toes, but they do a good job here in our community. I want to brag on them. So what you do, you either go to your, say you go to your counselor, or someone comes to me, and some of what we've talked about today, they present. And I say, well, it looked like you're experiencing this idea of SAD. And they didn't have a history of other depression. Well, one of the things we do is we start talking about just what you said a minute ago. The family, the friends, the church, the neighbors, activities, hobbies, working out in the gym, walking, all kind of stuff like that. We begin to talk about like that to see if that's possible. There's another treatment, and this is people, when they find out about this, they say, really? It's called a light box. And we have some lights here in the studio, Shine, notice
Yes,
today. Yes. And it's similar to that. I'm not privy to know for sure what kind of light it is. I looked it up. You can buy them on the internet or someplace from $19 to $169. And it's a type of ray, a type of light. Since sunlight and the lack of sunlight, as we said earlier, is one of the main causes of this, and that whole metabolism process. Well, it's something about sitting under that type of light, and it's not like a one that gives you a tan or anything like that. For 30 minutes a day, and mainly in the morning when you're having your devotionals or reading the newspaper, or if you get a chance to sit down and have your breakfast. I know families are really on the go. You can really do it any time, but they say preferably in the morning. It's something about that replaces the sunlight that we don't have. You see, and then that begins to change that metabolic rate, increases serotonin. Now, if you go to counseling and try to figure out ways to cope and do better with this and get treatment, and you try the sunlight this for SAD, and you're still not feeling well, then I think the third step would be to go either back to or go to your physician or a psychiatrist, and usually a psychiatrist is not needed in these areas unless it's a more serious thing. And you just talk with them about that you'd been to your counselor, or you yourself just think, I might be experiencing that. And they'll ask you some questions, usually you'll fill out a form, and they're pretty knowledgeable. They'll say, well, it looks like that maybe what you're experiencing is a seasonal affective disorder. And at that point, they might suggest that you take an antidepressant. Now, antidepressants are not habit forming. Mm-hmm. They're very safe, and they usually start with a low dosage, and you might take it during the winter months. It takes anywhere from 7 days to 2 weeks to 3 weeks to get into your system, and they'll monitor you on that. And as you start feeling better, and in the spring of the year, you just stop taking the medicine, and you're off and running again. So it's a combination of counseling, the light box, medications, the support of friends and family. Is probably the overall treatment that we have for SAD.
Great. Well, I'm thrilled to know that there's resources out there for people that are experiencing this, and we would urge our viewers that if you or a loved one has, what we used to refer to as the winter blues or SAD, look up some of the resources that we've given you today. If you have a local counselor, or just start with your medical physician, and they can get you started on the path to feeling better. That's all the time we have today for Table Talk. We appreciate you joining us. If you have topics that you would like to see addressed on the show, just email us at tabletalk@benlomondconnect.net. And we appreciate Dr. Martin coming today, and thank you for joining us. Come back again next week for more Table Talk.